Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is Jeff Morton with Let's Talk About It. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Um, got a lot to talk about. I don't have a guest today. I just got back from Israel Thursday. And quite honestly, folks, it took me a good couple of days to get my feet rewired to being home. Jet lag was something else. I couldn't function. I literally couldn't function mentally. I couldn't focus on anything. Friday, Saturday, probably Saturday night, I started getting my bearings back together. But anyway, we finally went to Israel. I went with El Shaddai Ministries, a tour. The trip for me personally was a gift. And so it had been postponed a couple of times because of the wars going on in Israel. But we did go, and we left on the 4th. I think it was the 4th or the 5th. And we returned on the 15th. Let me tell you about that plane ride. That plane ride, 14 hours on a plane. I had never been on a plane for 14 hours. Uh, that was grueling. But the trip to Israel was amazing. And I got to admit, I was a little apprehensive about flying into a war zone. Some of my coworkers and people that I know were like, you got to be kidding. You're going to Israel? Let me tell you something. I felt safer in Israel than I do in Tacoma. Tacoma's the closest city to me, big city. Certainly Seattle. I felt so safe. It was like the country was not even at war, as far as we were concerned, because we never encountered it. I will say, though, we landed at Ben Gurion Airport, and there had been a missile that they had shot down, and part of that missile fell near the airport. We actually drove by where it had created a crater. There was mud and debris and everything thrown up all over the streets. It was pretty interesting, but we never saw any war or any activity like that at all. In fact, I couldn't get over how peaceful it was. There was too a couple of different times when the sirens went off, and the hotel we were staying in, they had a protocol that we had to follow. There was another time when we went to the Knesset and the sirens went off. Several people jumped out of their cars and ran to the sides, left the car right in the middle of the road, but most of the people just kind of ignored it. So it was a very interesting time in Israel. And we're going to talk a lot about that. I got a lot I want to try to pour into this 1 hour show. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on the program, but I've got a lot I want to talk to you about. But I want to read something to you, and there's a reason I'm going to read it to you. This comes out of Psalm 105, verses 8 through 10. It says, "He remembers his covenant forever, the promise he made for 1,000 generations, the covenant he made with Abraham, the oath he swore to Isaac, he confirmed it to Jacob as a decree to Israel, as an everlasting covenant." I know that verse well. I know several verses that speak to the covenant that God made with Israel. I'm a Bible guy, okay? I'm not necessarily a religious. My mind is not swooped in religion. I think religion, its greatest accomplishment is division. I do understand the biblical story, and I understand the biblical protocol, the political structure of the Bible. I get it. I'm on a different level than most people when it comes to all of this. However, the covenant made with Israel is everlasting, and it says to 1,000 generations. Well, it's really only been about 4,000 years since the nation of Israel was formed. So we haven't even scratched the surface on that covenant thing. The reason why I'm pointing that out to you is because everywhere that we went, all the different sites that we visited, the people, I kept seeing in my mind that if I took away all of the time in between certain events, for example, from the time God spoke to Abraham, made the covenant with Abraham, to the time Moses, well, if you just erase the time in between and just bunch those two events together, and then on top of that, you bunch the Red Sea crossing of the Reed Sea, as it's actually called, or you erase the time between the crossing of the Reed Sea to Mount Sinai when the giving of the Torah, or if you just erase the time in between Mount Sinai, when they went into the promised land, when they conquered the promised land, when they were kicked out of the promised land, when the nation was divided. If you take great big chunks of time away from the story, then it becomes one continuous thread of God revealing himself to this people in order for the nations to understand who he is. I could see that. It was like crystal clear. And of course, I'm a New Testament guy. I believe in the Brit Hadashah, which is the confirmation of the Messiah coming. A lot of the Jews don't necessarily believe in the first coming of the Messiah. I absolutely do. I just don't see it from a Christian lens. I see it more from they were Jews. So I try to understand culturally what those writers were talking about in the Brit Hadashah, what we call the New Testament today. But that everlasting covenant, I mean, that's God's word. And as I visited all the different sites and got the emotion of being there, I realized that the story of Israel is continuing. It's ongoing. We're in this crazy wartime situation where they're being, just like the Bible said, they would be surrounded by nations. They would be a consternation to the nations. They would be at war. It's all happening. So for me, being in the land of Israel was a familiar thing for me because I've studied and researched these covenants, the kingdom, the relationship between God and Israel for many, many years. So it was kind of familiar for me. However, to actually be at the Sea of Galilee, which is actually a lake, there's no word in Hebrew for sea, to be on a boat moving across the Galilee, to see the different places where our Messiah, the church calls him Jesus, I call him Yeshua, to see the different places that he spent most of his time right around the Sea of Galilee. And to see that, I remember when we got out on the water, then the emotion hit me like a tidal wave. Because on the boat that we took out there, and I can't remember the name of the company that was elected to take us out there, they had a worship service where they started praising God. And of course, the emotion just was overwhelming. So to be there, to see it, the Sea of Galilee, was breathtaking for me. And that's when I had to sit down on the steps of that boat and have a moment. It was, wow, I'm actually in the land of Israel. That was one of the highlights of the trip. There's 3 highlights of the trip, and I hope to talk about those 3. That's one of them. I'm going to talk about the other 2 here as the show on my podcast progresses. I met some very interesting people while I was there. We went with a group. There was about 45 of us there. It was hustle and bustle to get to different venues that they had set aside for us to tour, which was conducted by Yosher Tours. I highly recommend them. I've done 2 tours with Yosher Tours. That's Yosher, Yosher. Sherry Moore is the owner. And, I kept thinking about how they put all this together, how to get 45 people scheduled to all these different places. So I really commend the effort that went into getting us there. Of course, the last time I did it, we had 2 busloads, so it was a whole different thing. This was a little bit more mellower. Anyway, I wanted to read that covenant because, let me get rid of that. I've got notes here. I'm going to do a little history. Now, this is stuff I've studied, and I've argued this, what I'm about to talk to you folks about. I've argued this in the face of media, in the face of the BDS movement, in the face of the so-called Palestinian people. I have argued against the media campaign to throw Israel under the bus, to say that they're occupiers, to say that they have a government system that's apartheid. All of that is so much, it's just a flat out lie. But it's a 70-year-old lie. And their college campuses, which are pretty much purchased, in my opinion, by the government of Qatar. A lot of money's gone into to promulgate this lie that there's such a thing as a Palestinian people. So I'm going to give you a little history lesson here, okay? In the year 136 AD, they had a great big revolt. It was called the Bar Kokhba Revolt. And what happened was Bar Kokhba declared that he was the Messiah, and the Jews split. They were in the process of maybe conquering Rome. They had been in fight with Rome for 40 some odd years. But when he declared himself the Messiah, there was a split that happened with the Jews, because the ones who understood who Yeshua was, they a lot of them were gone, by the way. However, they lost. That's the point I'm trying to make. They lost. They were on the verge of beating Rome. They lost. And what Emperor Hadrian did is he basically hauled most of the Jews out of the land, and he renamed it Syria Philistia, or Palestina. What he was doing was he was insulting the Jewish people by renaming it based on one of their ancient enemies, which had been the Philistines, okay? So he renamed the land Palestine. We call it Palestine today, because he was trying to erase Jewish presence in the land. It says here, the renaming was part of a deliberate Roman policy to suppress Jewish nationalism and erase the connection of the Jewish people to the land of Judea. This, of course, was with the Bar Kokhba revolt. So what happened 1,800 years later, you had the Balfour Declaration after World War II, actually after World War I, and the conversation popped up about giving the Jews a homeland. Naturally, it was to return them to the land that they owned. However, Mark Twain said of the land, and I got it right here, he said, this land called Palestine, a desolate country whose soil is rich enough, but is given over wholly to weeds, a silent, mournful expanse. We never saw a human being on the whole route, hardly a tree or shrub anywhere, even the olive and the cactus, those fast friends of this worthless soil, had almost deserted the country. Palestine sits in sackcloth and ashes, desolate and unlovely. We got to talk to a rabbi. He came and visited our group, and he went through this whole presentation about what Mark Twain saw. But of course, if you listen to the college kids or you listen to the media, there was a great big country, a flourishing country called Palestine, full of Palestinian people. Not according to Mark Twain and not according to history. So as I was I got to get this back out of here. As I was going through this, preparing this show, I just wanted to let you know that I know the actual history. I know that in 1917, when the Ottoman Turks were defeated, that the British started renaming all these lands over here, Iraq, Iran. But they ended up giving what is the Balfour Declaration was creating a place for the Jews to go home, basically. That happened in 1917. It was realized through several United Nations. It was called the League of Nations at the time. But the idea was the Jews had suffered. Let's get them back into their land. That's literally what happened. And as soon as they did that, and that was declared, hey, it's time. It's May. Let's give them back their property. As soon as they did that, Six Nations attacked Israel. They were all Islamic. And you'd have to understand why they did that. Because in Islam, once Islam conquers a land, it's called Levant. It means it belongs to Allah. And so the idea was the Jews are now occupying the land conquered by Islam. The nations gave them back their ancestral land, but a lot had happened between Islam, which rose up in the 5th century, basically became what it became in the 7th century. So now this land that they conquered after they defeated the what do they call the Knights of the, I can't even think of their names. This is a problem I'm having lately. The Templar Knights, the Crusaders, they defeated the Crusaders. And so Islam pretty much ran most of the Middle East, what we call Mesopotamia. The Christians had it for a short period of time as well. Anyway, when you know this history, then you realize in 1948, after Hitler was defeated, the Jews had their land, but then there was a Winston Churchill reneged on something. He took 80% of the property that it was given back to the Jews, and he gave it to Transjordan. In 1943, we ended up with a country called Jordan. So that there's so much there. I don't want to give you a great big history lesson. I just know that what you're hearing in the media is a flat out lie. And it's been a lie for about 70 years. When I see these college kids protesting the BDS movement, occupation, Israel's an occupier, it is a lie from the pit of hell that unfortunately people who don't know their history believe. And it's really kind of an evil thing. So as I'm walking around in the land in Israel, and I'm looking at various sites over there, let me just put some up here. This is the Wailing Wall. I've seen the Wailing Wall in pictures only. I got to go there. I got to stand there. I got to see what was going on here at the Kotel. I got an opportunity to see it firsthand, to see what's done. There's another room off to the side where only the rabbis go. I got to walk through that. Anyway, this is me. I put a little note, prayed for my family and my kids. I stuck it in the crack. And I found out something interesting. They collect every one of those because they believe it's sacred. They don't throw them away. So I was really pleased about that. But here I am standing at the Wailing Wall praying for my family. I wish I wasn't carrying the bag. I wish I had put the bag down. But that's me standing there praying at the Kotel. And I'm going to just kind of go through these real quick. Very interesting thing that happened with this young man. His name is Levi, we called him. I've known Levi since he was maybe 19, 18 years old. He, Aliyah, moved to Israel. And funny thing happened. I love this kid. I've known this kid. I met him at El Shaddai Ministries. I'm in the dining hall at the Dan Panorama Hotel, and I hear somebody say, Jeff, and I turn around and it's Levi. He's standing right there. I got to tell you, folks, that seeing him again after I haven't seen him for several years. He's got 3 kids. He's married now. Seeing him in Israel of all places, and he comes up to me and recognizes me was a moment. It was really a moment. I really, really appreciated that. And I come to find out that he's a student of a rabbi named Ariel. I don't know the whole name. I never met him really. But he said there's a lot going on over there. And we talked for a minute. I actually called him a day or two later, hoping we could maybe get together. That wasn't going to happen. But he walked up to me. I don't know anybody in Israel, okay? And he walks up to me and he says, Jeff, how are you? And we hugged and everything. That was the moment to see him and to know he's got 3 beautiful kids. I remember when he got married. He goes by Levi Yitzhak, and he's a student of this rabbi, which this rabbi is an Orthodox rabbi who believes in Yeshua. I didn't know that was such a thing, but yes, it is. And so we didn't really get a chance to talk much about that, but that was a moment. That was one of the highlights of the trip, okay? That was probably number 2. Jeremy Campbell, Rabbi Jeremy Campbell, I've met him several times. I know about him through El Shaddai Ministries. He's visited El Shaddai Ministries. This building that they're in, I remember when it was just a shell of a building. El Shaddai Ministries is instrumental in helping to develop the land that they're on now. There's a house, there's a swimming pool. He said something while we were there, and this is highlight number 3. I got to see him and Rabbi Ari Abramowitz, who I know both of them. He said something, and he said this a long time ago, several years ago, but he said it again. They're out there, folks. They're surrounded by Arabs. They're out facing the Judean desert. And he said, we came out here to conquer this land because it's part of Israel. And the reason we're doing this is for all of you. We're securing the land for all of you. And I understood that because God created this nation in order to reveal himself to the nations. And so Rabbi Gempel, who had a horse accident, I see him on the Israeli Guys. I track him on the Israeli Guys, which is a YouTube channel they have. These are the Hyovel brothers. I've been tracking these guys and watching their stuff. In fact, this is one of my news sources, is the Israel Guys. Anyway, he said, we're doing this for you. Our mandate is to be caretakers to the land in order for the nations to be brought into the covenant made with Abraham. I understood that. That's why I read that verse in Psalms 105, verse 8 through 10. I understand that. Anyway, we were there. This bus took us on a dirt road up and down this hill to get us to where we were going. I was like, are you kidding me? We're actually going to do this? And the back of this property is a sheer cliff down into the canyons. He says, you don't want to go down there because there's jackals and you might not come back. But they are homesteading this land, and it was remarkable, really remarkable. And Ari, let's see if I can go to the next picture here. Rabbi Ari, they both spoke to us, but he's in uniform. He's part of the IDF. He's also been called up to be a protector of this land. And what he shared was just as amazing. So, and they're so generous of spirit. I love these two guys. I mean, I really do. Anyway, this is me on the Sea of Galilee. This is when I sat down. I had tears in my eyes when this picture was taken. It was just a remarkable time. And they're all worshiping and singing. And I'm on the Sea of Galilee. Are you kidding me? This is also another shot of the Sea of Galilee. We various places we sat, and our tour guide explained to us a lot of what he understood biblically about where we were. This here is, we went up to Masada. You have to take this cable car up there. Masada was very interesting, tragic story. You know, over 900 Jews took their lives up there. But we got to see all these ruins up there. I was surprised at what was built on top of this mountain by Herod. Herod was a monster. The tour guide pointed that out across the board. But anyway, in the background, you see the Dead Sea. And so I got to go into the Dead Sea as well and float in salt water, no life in this water. That was very cool. But the Masada thing was taking that cable car up and then going up there and seeing what they built with the rocks that are part of that mountain, and then seeing what it looked like. Some of the artist renditions is like, how did they do this? And this is a desert. Anyway, this is me again taking a picture. I think I'm on I don't know where I was, but that's the Dead Sea in the background. It's pretty big, pretty long, I should say. And then this is a group photograph of the people that I went on the tour with. This was at Jerusalem. I got to tell you something about Jerusalem. I had no idea. I had no concept of Jerusalem being as big as it was or is. I didn't know it was as large as it is. I thought Tel Aviv was bigger than Jerusalem. No, it's not. Jerusalem is spread out over these mountaintops for miles all around. And I was like, wow, this is bigger than I thought. The other thing about going through Jerusalem, you had these Arab villages on one side of the street, and you had the Jewish quarter on the other side of the street. And I felt safe, completely safe. In fact, there was one Arab neighborhood, I forget the name of it, but they have never been against Israel taking the land. They've been very supportive. And I had never known that. But this is a very hostile environment. As far as apartheid was concerned, that's a crock. And when somebody comes up to me and say, well, Israel's an apartheid nation, and I've had that happen to me because I'm Black, I've never believed that. I got to go there and see the Arabs, and every Arab over there calls themselves Palestinian because they want the world to know that we're all Palestinians and Israel took our land. It's a macabre diabolical situation over there. But I felt very safe. Never, not one time was I concerned about my safety. And we went into the what the world calls the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and we're driving through Arab-controlled villages, Muslim-controlled villages, driving through them. Okay, nobody's shooting at us, nobody's shooting rocks at us. They did tell us that Hebron, we weren't able to go to Hebron, because they said it was dangerous. Anyway, I was very, I don't know how to tell you how impressed I was. It's a strange thing to know that you have this little tiny nation surrounded by these Arab nations, these Muslim nations that want them destroyed. And as I'm walking around over there with our group, and I'm looking at all these children of these beautiful children with these beautiful eyelashes and dark hair and curly hair. The girls, the children were so pretty. I couldn't get over how beautiful these kids were and how well mannered they were. I didn't see, there's nothing, not even remotely close to what you see in Seattle, in Jerusalem. But go to Tel Aviv, you see the same thing. It was a dichotomy that if you want to see what goes on in Seattle or California, see the homeless, see the purple hair, the earrings, the LGBT, Tel Aviv is your place, okay? I saw all of that there. That's where I lost my passport, which, by the way, I lost my passport the very first night I was there. After a 14-hour plane ride, I was delirious, and I forgot to zip up my bag. I don't know where it went. I don't know what happened, but I lost it the very first night. And then, fortunately, I was able to get a temporary pass, an emergency passport the next day. It was like a God thing because there's very little tourists over there. Had there been, tourist season, I might still be in Israel because you can't leave the country without a passport. And, they were telling me that you might not be able to get out of here for at least a month. Anyway, God took care of that. I got my passport the next morning. I caught up with the tour. I'm walking around the streets of Tel Aviv by myself to get to the embassy, got everything taken care of, got a taxi cab. They connected me to the tour. It was costly. It cost me a lot to do that. Losing my passport kind of dipped in the money that I took with me. But all in all, it was taken care of. And the God that I serve didn't allow this to become a nightmare. Okay. So about Israel, we went to so many sites. I talked to so many people. I talked to one lady at the hotel. Her mother was Israeli and her father was Arab, and she hated the Jewish people. She's working in the hotel that we're staying in. I'm not going to mention the hotel, but it was down by the Sea of Galilee. She hated, and she was trying to tell me about occupation. And when she realized that I knew the truth and I countered her conversation, she didn't want to talk to me anymore because I wasn't buying what she was telling me. Okay. I could prove to her that what she was saying wasn't true. And the more I proved that to her, the less she wanted to talk to me. But at first, she thought I was just some guy from America who didn't know any of this. Well, I know quite a bit about it, so it fell on deaf ears. And I challenged her on a lot of the things she was saying. And it was kind of interesting. Her mother's Israeli, her father's Arab. She said Palestinian. I said, is he Palestinian or is he Arab? She said, well, he's Arab, but we call ourselves Palestinian. And that was kind of a sad moment for me because she had hatred in her words when speaking about the Jewish people. And she's working in a hotel serving all of us. It's an interesting thing to see this hatred underneath the surface, and yet it didn't faze me, nor was I fearful. It was like I'm more afraid of walking down the street in Seattle at night than I was in Israel. It's interesting. Of course, everybody over there is packing. I remember seeing some of the girls. Uh, I talked to 3 IDF soldiers, women. These are kids. I mean, these are 20-year-olds. I talked to them. They were very pleasant, very nice. I took a picture of them. I didn't post that picture up here, but it was surreal. It really was surreal for me to be there, knowing that Israel's fighting a war on 7 fronts in the Gaza. We saw none of that activity up on the northern part of Israel. It was kind of a weird thing, you know. But then their confidence in God. Oh, I got to tell you too, the tour guide, he went out of his way to tell us how much the ultra orthodox are disliked in the land, and there's a whole lot to that. I don't want to say too much about that because I'm getting secondhand information from a tour guide, but apparently these guys they live in it was just kind of sad because the division in Israel is just like it is in the United States. I mean, it really is. And, you know, you have the secular community, you have the religious community, you have the ultra Orthodox. And as I remember talking to one kid, he's 21 years old, beautiful young man. Him and the bartenders, there were 2 bartenders. I'm sitting there talking to him, having a beer. And they both said, you know, we just want to be at peace. We don't want to fight. We don't want to do all this. Well, I heard that from a lot of the Jewish people that I spoke to. They just want peace. They just want to live like normal people. And for the most part, that's what we saw. I mean, when we went down through the streets in Jerusalem, these people are shopping. They're busy. They're scurrying all over the place. We went to the shuk, which is an open market with all these different shops. Reminded me of the one in Turkey. I can't remember where that one was. I think it was in Istanbul. But there's 4 streets of open shops. You go in there, there's restaurants. There's all kinds of businesses, markets, people selling their wares, their food. I've got some really great ginger tea downstairs. And we went to Ben Yehuda Street, or no, was it? Yeah, Ben Yehuda Street, which was another open market kind of place, more touristy. But everybody's shopping. They're doing life. Nobody's running for cover. Nobody was afraid. They were used to it. They kept telling me, we're used to this. This is normal for us. To see the young people walking around with AK-47s everywhere you went, everywhere you looked. I felt so sad for the people of Israel, both the Jew and the non-Jew, because this killing and this hatred, and there's hatred on one side of the street, and there's people on the other side of the street who want peace. I can't explain it. It was very surreal. It was strange. Hey, Michael, I see you in there. Yeah, I appreciate that, my friend Michael. He says, that safety you talk about, I feel that in Texas. Everyone's packing down here too. I know, I've been down there. But this is my first time going to Israel. And I got to tell you, I had a fantastic time. I had a fantastic time. Now, Jeff almost lost. Well, I lost my passport. I reached into my pocket to pull something out. My wallet fell on the ground. I didn't even know it. One of the people at El Shaddai Ministries, the secretary, I don't know what her job is over there, but she saw it fall. She walked up to me and handed me my wallet. That would have been a nightmare if I'd lost my wallet. And then one other time I set my phone down and I got up and walked away because we're rushing. I'm not going to make excuses. We're rushing around from place to place. But I put my phone down on the bench and I walked away, and another guy come up to me a few minutes later and says, hey, you want your phone? I got it. I didn't even know I left it there. So there were 3 instances that occurred over there that could have ruined this trip for me. And I wore pants that I could zip up, but I didn't always have them zipped up. Anyway, what else do I want to talk about? Oh, some of the people that I met over there. There's one individual in particular that I want to talk about. Well, there's actually several. I got to sit and listen to Yehuda Glick, who was a rabbi over there. He's always getting arrested on the Temple Mount. I called him, what did I call him? He's a ginger. He's got bright red hair. He came and spoke to the group, and it was wonderful. It was very dynamic. My favorite was Pastor Pesach Walicki. In fact, I walked up to him and I said, sir, after he got done speaking to the group, I said, everything you just said, I echo when I'm talking to people because I don't have a religious framework. When I'm discussing this stuff, I see this as very, very political, which is what he was talking about. He said, and I'm going to quote him, he said, faith and politics are not separate when you're reading the biblical story. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. From the time of Genesis to the book of Revelation, politics are a huge part of the story. So I see the Bible more from a political lens and how the kingdom of God is being structured and, the Torah and the behavior of it all. I see it. So I go up to him and I said, you echoed everything I just said. I qualified my statements. And don't you know, Rabbi Pesach Walicki grabbed a hold of me, gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek. And he says, it's refreshing to hear non-Jews understand this. Yeah, that was kind of a moment for me. That was pretty cool. So we talked to 5 rabbis. We met with David Rubin. Hi, Janice. I got my friends popping in here. David Rubin, he runs a shelter for kids in Shiloh. Saw him. I've seen him numerous times. So he shared some words of wisdom with us as well. David Rubin had, his son was shot and just below the neck in a terrorist thing many, many years ago. I've heard his story many, many times. They always, these guys are always looking for money too. Israel's not, it doesn't have a whole lot of money, and there's a whole lot of money being spent on this war. So they're all looking for a little help. I was going to bring up Rabbi Pesach Walicki's ministry or whatever he does over there, because that's a big one. Anyway, I've said all of that to say each rabbi that shared with us, the idea was to bring the Christian community into an awareness that we don't have. And we don't have it, trust me. They worship the God of Israel. We worship the Messiah. I understand where they're at. I understand their love for God. And I understand what I've learned. I just don't see the biblical story from a Christian lens, in part because I understand the culture and the history and the world that the Bible was given to us. That's not to put Christianity down. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't see it from a Sunday service anymore. I see it more from a political, here's the behavior, this is what's expected of you, you're obligated to represent the king. It's a whole different mindset for me. And I have several people to thank for that. But I'm a God guy. I believe in the Tanakh, the Torah, the Tanakh, the prophets, the whole 9 yards, and I believe in the Brit Hadashah. To me, it's one gigantic book written by a bunch of Jewish people to reveal to us the purposes of God. I get that. So that's kind of my heart's cry on that. Don't fund genocide. I got somebody here that's in my thing here. Don't fund genocide. Yeah, well, if you guys understand the real story behind Israel, please support what they're doing over there. I get it. You can't listen to the news media. By the way, the news media painted this picture that Israel was in this massive war and it was very dangerous and the airlines were canceling. None of that is true. None of it. So, when I'm dealing with people who get their information from a media that lies to them, it's very easy to counter what they believe. Very easy for me to do that, but they're emotionally connected to that lie, so it becomes it just becomes a worthless attempt. They believe something emotionally. Rarely do they have any facts, and most of them never been to the land. I can say I've been to the land now, and so I know that what they think is a lie. I've known it for 40 years, but now I actually got to go to Israel, talk to the people, and confirm what I've already known. These people, that the BDS folks, the occupiers, the Israel's apartheid nation, they're as wacky as you can get. Okay, they're just their ignorance is biblical, and I think that might be on purpose. So I don't even try that conversation anymore. If it was up to me, I would tell Israel, completely wipe Gaza straight, get rid of every Arab that's in that land, and reclaim your land. That's what I would do if it was up to me, because Israel's had missiles raining down on it ever since Gush Katif, ever since they gave up. Ariel Sharon gave up the Gaza, ever since Bill Clinton said, hey, let's do this thing here, and we're going to start working on dividing the land. These people have had the Intifada, the Palestinian Authority. These people have had missiles raining down upon them, killing their children, people crawling through the windows and knifing entire families. This is an insanity that people who don't understand the truth about that, they have no concept of it. They have no concept of it. Okay, it gets me a little riled up, okay, because I know the truth. I know the truth. Anyway, I met this guy. I'm going to kind of switch gears now and talk about something that happened while I was there. My roommate, I asked when I don't like to travel with people, strangers. I'd like a room all by myself. But since the trip was gifted to me, they said, well, we're going to put you with a roommate. And I thought, I inquired, what would it be if I could just pay for a room by myself? Excuse me. Well, it was out of my price range. So I had to have a roommate. And I lucked out, okay? There's a gentleman, his name is Gerald. Call him Jerry. His name is Gerald McLaughlin. And he owns a company called SpecialGuests.com. Well, he's my roommate. He's in his 70s. I think he's early 70s. And he starts telling me all these personal stories about himself and what he's going through. And then he starts telling me what he does. And he's a booking agent, among other things. He's a producer. He's done a lot of things. But he's a booking agent. So a lot of the times when you're watching Fox News or Newsmax or certain podcasts, he books the guests. And he does it out of the heart of trying to make a difference in the world. So if there's a topic and they've got guests, they call up and say, hey, I've got a guest who can address this topic. And then if you get booked on the show, that's a win-win for what Jerry does. And as the more I listened to him, at first I thought he was a little Lulu. I might even think he's still a little Lulu. But he's a brilliant mind. I mean, he's over there writing articles while we're on the tour. He sits down at the desk in our hotel room and spits out an article, and it's published in Arutz Sheva the next day. It's published on Newsmax 2 days later. He brought in a lady, I forget her name. Let me go here just for a second. Yeah, Rochelle Silvesky. She is with Arutz Sheva. She's one of the national editors at Arutz Sheva. He calls her up and says, hey, you want to come and speak to our group? She's there. She had dinner with us. She shared quite a bit about Israeli National News, which is a conservative news outlet in Israel. I've been following Arutz Sheva for years. Well, I got to meet one of the national editors, and interestingly enough, he asks me, who do you like on Newsmax? And I told him who. Next thing I know, he's on the phone talking to this guy on speaker. So he's a very interesting character. I think he kind of annoyed a few people because he's He is what he is. He's just fun, but you gotta know him. I enjoyed him. I really did. He said, Jeff, I'd love to see you maybe come on board and help us out with this. So I'm kind of looking at that right now, learning how this booking stuff works, just to see if, it might be fun to do. Uh, my podcast is, if I could revamp my podcast, if I had the wherewithal to do all that, it would have been done now. In fact, I might make some changes about the format here. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about a few things because I met this man and he inspired me to really think about it. His passion is to try to make a difference in the world, not for money, but for the sake of humanity. And he drove that point home several times. And if you don't know the man, he's a self-made man who's done a variety of things. And I really enjoyed him. I can't say enough about that because I don't think he knew how much I appreciated him, and particularly with what he was able to do. His website is it's scrolling across the screen now, specialguest.com. He introduced me to Todd Bauman, who is the guy who's kind of running everything. And he's talking to a couple of us about, what he does and if we're interested in becoming a booking agent. I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've been doing blogs and radio shows and all this kind of stuff. Maybe I need to step up my game and kind of learn from some of these guys who've been doing this. Jerry's been doing this for 30, 40 years, I think he said. Anyway, he got on the phone and was talking to somebody that I admire on Newsmax. I'm not going to mention his name, but I was pretty impressed. And I was just very impressed with what he does. It's the Lulus that know how. Anyway, I got a very good friend of mine. She's sending me messages in the chat. Thanks, Janice. I appreciate you. What I'm trying to say overall, I got about 13 minutes left in the broadcast. It took me a few days to get my sea legs back together. I wanted to write a couple of articles. I'm going to see if I can write some articles and get them published in Arusheva. I was invited to do that. So maybe this trip is going to have a different kind of leg for me to start moving around in. And there's so much happening biblically. In fact, there's something that I was made known to me, and I can't talk about it. It's a big deal, but that's something I shouldn't have even said that. It's a big deal, folks. Big deal. Anyway, Israel was amazing, and everything that I believed about Jerusalem, the people of Israel, I got to see firsthand. I got to see the Dead Sea. I got to lay in the Dead Sea. I got to see Masada. I got to walk through the ruins of Masada. I got to go to the pool of Shalom, or not Shalom. I don't know, where they dip the cup. I can't think of it right now. I got to walk on the Temple Mount. I got to see the abomination of desolation, which, we all know is the Dome of the Rock. I got to see and talk with rabbis. I got to walk through the streets of Jerusalem. I got to be a part of the world that Israel is. Now, I'm a conservative. I'm not a liberal person. I never have been. Okay, I want to make that perfectly clear. I just can't think like liberal people. I just can't. So when talking with the people at Arusheva and listening to the woman who came and spoke to us, all these things they just echo my heart, my personality. And she's a Brooklyn, New Yorker. That was kind of cool too. I love New Yorkers because they speak their mind, and she certainly did. She was senior to me. She was older than me, but she spoke her piece, and I appreciated that. So this whole thing with special guests, learning to be a booking agent, I'm going to see if I can do that, maybe an hour a day, and learn how that works, and keep doing the podcast. I might change the format of the podcast a little bit more because there's some big things happening biblically in the world. And you know, you know something, folks. Let me just say this. I was in the Christian churches for over 40 years. When I started learning the Torah, when I met Pastor Mark Biltz and others, Dr. Dina Dye, Rico Cortez, when I started learning a different way to see the Bible, when I had my moment with God back in 2007, everything changed. Everything changed. My biblical understanding of the Bible. And I'm kind of like this Lone Ranger out here because I don't see the Bible from, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, get saved to go to heaven. That's not in my head at all. What's in my head is the covenant structure of the kingdom of God. And if you call yourself saved, in my mind, that's the beginning of your obligation to at least understand the rules, the laws, the statutes, the commandments, the structure of the kingdom of God as a citizen grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. To me, that makes my responsibility as a biblical student connected to the kingdom of God through the blood of our Messiah. It's more of an obligation as opposed to a salvation. So I just see it that way. And I think when the Christian mind understands the Torah, which means the instructions given to Moses that Abraham knew, that Adam knew, this is the instructions on how to promote life and to represent the kingdom of God in the earth, to be the difference, to be the light. Without it, you're just another religious system that divides you from amongst one another. And here's the biggest thing. Israel's over there fighting because they're in covenant with the God of Israel. They're fighting for the land. They are fighting for the return of Messiah. If every Christian understood what that really means, this is my opinion, we would be the backbone of this effort. Unfortunately, we don't get it. In the Christian community, we're waiting for Jesus to return and take us away and go live in heaven. And folks, meanwhile, the Jews are over there doing what God asked them to do, fight for the land. And I'm not saying every Jew over there is very secular over there. But the ones that understand this, that's what they're doing. They're fighting for the land. They're caretakers, and they understand why they have to do this. And to sit and talk to them, one of the things most Christians have never done is sat and listen to a Jewish person who loves God talk about why, and not bring up the great big elephant in the room. Just get to know what they know. Get to know what they've been through. Get to know that they understand the mistakes made. Get to know what they know. It does the body good to know that the people that God made an everlasting covenant with have been part of this story for 3,800 years. And I can't thank El Shaddai Ministries for allowing me to tag along and be a part of this time in Israel. Actually, when I was on the Sea of Galilee, I saw Pastor Mark. Pastor Mark is my friend. Okay, he's my friend. There's been things that have happened over the course of time that I disagree with. I've seen people get hurt. I don't know the inside story on everything, but I was over there with this man who has taught me how to see the Bible from a different lens for the last 18 years. I don't agree with him in certain areas anymore, and that's okay. He opened a gigantic door for me to understand the Bible in a different lens. And when I was on the Sea of Galilee, and I'm sitting out there with tears pouring down my face because I'm I'm understanding where I'm at. And I saw him over in the back in the corner, and I got up and I gave him a great big bear hug to thank him for inviting me to tag along on this tour. And then after the Sea of Galilee, it just snowballed. All of the different ruins we saw, you know, you're walking on the ground and you look over and there's 4 stories down that somebody has uncovered in the dirt. And there's a whole bunch of ruins under the ground. You can only see a part of them. To understand that history that's been buried over there. It's been buried religiously. It's been buried physically. It's been buried by lies. It's been buried by fake religions, false teachers. To see them digging the facts out of the dirt was really special for me. I mean, folks, I'm looking down in holes that somebody's dug in solid rock 3 stories down. 2,500 years ago. Or I'm on the top of these mountains where they've got these great big buildings that used to stand up. How did they get these up there? How did they carve this stuff? This intricate, detailed stuff. We don't give the ancient world enough credit, and I'll say this as many times as I have to. We're not the new thing. We're what they produced. We're a product of that world. And so to go back and actually put your hands on it and touch it and see it and experience it, it becomes easier to connect that world to the world we live in. And the one thing my good friend Dr. Dina Dye says, and I agree with her, the one thing that doesn't change, no matter what page of history you're on, is human behavior. They're over there killing each other. They're over in Russia and Ukraine killing each other. Human behavior doesn't change. And the reason is because we don't understand the Torah. We don't understand the instructions of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We don't understand how the Messiah came and confirmed all of that. He hit the mark. We don't understand just how special we are in the eyes of the Creator. And like I started this program out by simply saying, if you pull the gaps of time out of the biblical story and you just connect them one after the other, all the way up until this very moment in time, you can see the hand of God directing this nation, chastising this nation, building this nation up. You can see it like an IMAX movie. And that was my biggest takeaway coming out of Israel. So got to go back to work, got to keep moving. This has been I can't express to you. It's not like a vacation. It wasn't like a vacation. It was like stepping back into the world of my Messiah and seeing the hand of God guide this people through the centuries as nations chase them through the centuries, as religions chase them through the centuries to kill them. That's about all I got, guys. Just like the archaeological digs in Israel and seeing the treasures buried, we need to have the same motivation digging and searching for hidden treasures in the Torah. Janice, you are absolutely right. I totally get that. And I totally agree with you. So anyway, folks, that's my show today. It's a bit somber. I'm really not over the jet lag thing yet. I got to go back to work tomorrow. But I want to say something to everybody who listens to this program. I don't have a great big audience because I'm interviewing you people for the most part. Nobody cares about you. I do. I didn't mean it to sound that way. But I appreciate what I do. I'm going to keep doing this. And I have added motivation now because the story of the Bible is true. And you're a part of it, and I'm a part of it. And I think let's just keep talking about it, okay? So God bless you all. That's my show for today. We'll see you next week. I don't have a guest lined up. I got to get back in the saddle on all of that, along with all the other things I'm trying to do now. But we're going to keep pushing forward, and we will be talking to you again. God bless you guys. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.